Hello, how's it going? I'm Alex Burkill, presenter, meteorologist, and I'm coming to you from our Met Office headquarters for this week's Deep Dive. Storm Floris has now moved away, and I have plenty more to talk about. But before I get on, now do me a favour, hit that like button, leave a comment, leave a question. I'll try to answer some of them today, and if I don't answer them today, maybe we can answer them in the Weather Studio Live on Friday. Make sure you share this with anyone that you think is interested in, and don't forget we are also on Spotify as well as on YouTube. Maybe you're watching this on Spotify. Hello if you are. But let's get cracking. Like I said, there is a fair amount coming up. I want to talk about the potential for a tropical storm to head our way. Obviously it won't be an actual tropical storm by the time it reaches us, but I'll cover that in a second, as well as a little bit of a look back at July and see how that's affected things with regards to our summer temperatures. But first, I do want to look at Flores. Now, it was a fairly potent feature, an unseasonably deep area of low pressure that pushed its way in. And here behind me, I have the latest, or not the latest, I have yesterday's satellite and radar. I'm just going to scroll back so we can see how it developed as it pushed through. But you can really see the low pressure as it arrived and made its way across the UK, the swirl of cloud and the rain associated with it. You don't need to be a meteorologist to be able to pinpoint where the low pressure was as this feature came through. And it swept its way across the UK, particularly across Scotland. That's where the low tracked, but it brought some heavy rain to many places, particularly in the north, but also some very strong gusty winds, again, mainly across northern parts, Scotland, Northern Ireland. That's where we saw the strongest gusts. And then it pushed through and it's now clearing away towards the northeast. It's still blustery out there today at the time of recording. We still have some strong gusts out, but nowhere near as strong as yesterday. And we do still have some showers as well, but they're starting to ease as well. In terms of how windy it was, well, let's look at the top wind gusts that we recorded yesterday, and the strongest gust was 82 miles per hour at Wick in Scotland, which does actually mean Scotland equalled its all-time August wind gust record. So 82 miles per hour was the previous Scotland record for August, and that stays in place. The UK's all-time August record is 87 miles per hour. That was, I think that was at the Needles on the Isle of Wight several years ago. I think it was back in the late 80s. So not quite as windy as that one, but nonetheless an exceptional wind event. Some stations came close to or even maybe exceeded some of their August records. So it was a very windy spell, and as we've already been through in a lot of other content, the fact that it was coming through in August meant that the impacts were likely to be greater because of more outdoor plans, trees and leaf, that kind of thing. And so that's why we issued the warnings, that's why we had the name storm, and there was a fair amount of disruption, lots of travel disruption, some trees blown down over rail lines, etc. But now we move on. Let's look at the bigger picture. And here's the low that was Storm Floris. It's now pushed away towards Scandinavia, but you can still see that the jet stream's running across the UK, and it's actually a fairly strong jet for the time of year, and it's this that led to the low that was Storm Floris being such a potent feature. And because the jet stream's running across, there are various other low pressure centres coming close to the UK, but their track currently looks a bit different to Floris. Most of them look a bit further north. So let's run through, and actually I'm going to get rid of the jet stream now and put rain on instead because I prefer it. And if I just run through the next little while, and like I said, the showers through today, they are starting to ease. They're starting to die out, particularly away from the west, or from the west, they're starting to die out because we do have a bit of a ridge of high pressure building in. So that's going to settle our weather down for a short period of time. It does mean it could be a bit fresh tonight. Temperatures in a few places could drop into mid-single figures, so a little chilly maybe, depending on how you feel. But yeah, a fresher night than some recent nights tonight. And then, with that high pressure across much of the country, yes, there's some outbreaks of drizzly rain across the far north of the UK and a bit more cloud here, but for many, tomorrow is looking like a fine day. Lots of dry, sunny weather around and in that sunshine with light winds. Temperatures are going to be a bit higher than today and feeling a bit warmer too, more likely to get into those low to mid-20s, and so feeling pretty decent in any sunny spells. But then our attention turns to this frontal system that's coming, that's going to make its way in and going to push across from the northwest as we go into Thursday. And it's a bit of a tricky feature because it's actually splitting. And I wanted to show you something to try and illustrate that. Now, this is a cross section looking up through the air, and the cross-section actually runs. I'm going to try and explain this. The chief said I'd struggle, but I'm going to try and explain this. So what it's showing is the colours indicating our wet bulb potential temperature, and you can see the front along the map. So the higher wet bulb potential temperature is showing us where that front that I mentioned is pushing in. And on the left-hand side, I have a cross-section, and it looks up through the sky as we run from across the front. So this point is this point here, and this point, I've touched the screen, oh, it's all good, is this point here. And so this is kind of running across the front, then going up through the atmosphere. And you can see the front here with this higher wet bulb potential temperature, but you can see there's a real lean to it. And why is that important? Well, like I said, it's splitting, and because of actually within that plume of higher wet bulb potential temperature, we have lower theta W, the same thing, slightly higher up. And what that means is there's the potential for instability, and then that brings the risk of some showers to develop, some potentially heavy showers to develop along the front itself. So with that in mind, I'm just going to run through again, and again I'll get rid of the jet stream. Let's go back to Thursday morning. I should have mentioned that cross-section was for midnight, Wednesday night into Thursday, but you can see that front pushing its way across, and there are kind of various bits of wet weather mixed in with it because of that splitting that I mentioned, because of that lean in the front through the air or through the sky. It's hard to work out the best way of putting it, but nonetheless what we're expecting then is potential for some relatively heavy, possibly even thundery rain to push its way southeastwards across the country. By the time it reaches the far southeast, it's really broken up and fragmented, so not particularly heavy rain here, but other places the rainfall totals could be quite high. And there's actually relatively good model agreement as well with regards to the wet weather that's coming through as we go through into Thursday. I mean, it's only 2 days away now, so you would expect some relatively good model agreement. I did want to show you EC, GFS, as we often do as a model comparison, but they all said pretty much the same thing. So instead I've picked 3 previous runs from the Met Office model showing us 24-hour rainfall totals for this coming Thursday. And on the right-hand side I have the oldest model, so from yesterday 3Z. In the middle yesterday 15Z, so the mid-afternoon's run, and then the early run from this morning on the left-hand side. And you can see they all painted the idea of this quite wet picture, but yesterday's morning model run, it wasn't especially wet. There were no particularly high rainfall totals, but as we've got nearer the event, the rainfall totals now look like they could be a bit higher, and actually the last 2 model runs are in relatively good agreement as to where those high rainfall totals are likely to be. Perhaps the more recent one edges it just that little bit further north. Nonetheless, across parts of northwest England, Cumbria for example, parts of western, northwestern Wales over Snowdonia, and maybe Western Highlands, that's where we're most likely to see the highest rainfall totals. In terms of what we can expect, well, maybe 10 to 20 millimetres relatively widely, and 25 to 35 millimetres over the wettest places in those areas that I've just mentioned, particularly that higher ground, so western upslopes towards the west-northwest of the UK. So that's wet, probably not enough to cause any major problems, but we are obviously keeping an eye on it in case those rainfall totals look like they're going to get a little bit heavier. And then let's keep going because it's a bit early to stop. And so that front, I didn't mean to say we as I moved it away. I meant to say like we are then going to have that front clearing away. But I like the idea of we. Anyway, I get distracted so easily. So there was a low pressure centre with that front coming through as we go through Thursday. So that was one. Then there's another low pressure centre to the north of the UK as we go through Friday. So that's also going to bring some wetter, perhaps windier weather across northern parts, but actually towards the south, many central parts of the UK, having a pretty fine picture. And then, I forgot to show you something. So I'm just going to go back. What? No, I don't. No, I digress. Let's go. What I want to show you is, I haven't forgotten to show it to you. It's coming up. There we go. Right. So through Friday, we have an area of low pressure to the north of the UK. That's going to bring some wetter weather, but actually for many places, higher pressure towards the south. So that's largely fine. And that's the picture that we take into the weekend. But you'll notice that there's another low pressure coming closer towards the UK as we go through Saturday and more so into Sunday. So much of the country staying with the fine weather as we go into the weekend. and I'll talk about temperatures in a second, much of the country, but towards the north-northwest, always a bit cloudy, a bit wetter, a bit windier because of various low pressures coming through. But I want to look at this low pressure in a little bit more detail. Why? Well, because if we look at its origins, and it's actually currently Tropical Storm Dexter. Now, this is the forecast cone from NHC, and it shows that whilst it's currently here, just in the West Atlantic, it's forecast to push its way eastwards towards the UK. Now, obviously, by the time it reaches us, it's going to be heavily modified. It's not going to be a tropical storm as such, but it could still be quite a potent feature. And actually, if we run through the forecast at the moment, and if we go back to, so this is the here and now, so this is midday or 1 o'clock on Tuesday, and here is the low, that is Tropical Storm Dexter currently. And if I just run that through, when I practiced this, it was a bit too slow, so let's see if I talk slow enough that it keeps up with me. You can see it progressing and moving eastwards, and actually there's an upper trough that's going to be digging down, and as that upper trough digs down, it will interfere, is that the right word? It will interfere, it will mix with the low that is Dexter, and so that will help keep its momentum as it pushes its way across the Atlantic. So often we see tropical storms coming across, hurricanes in fact, coming across and dying a death over the Atlantic because the ocean's not warm enough to keep the energy to it. Meanwhile, in this instance, there's the potential for that upper trough to dig down and heavily influence the low, and so it will keep some of its oomph, its energy. In fact, it could even get a little bit deeper at times as it makes its way eastwards towards the UK. Worth bearing in mind at this point that the GFS model, so this is the Met Office model that I'm showing you, the GFS American model wants to do something very different. It takes the low a bit further south and it just stays to the south and doesn't really affect us too much. But both the Met Office model and the ECMWF, the European model, they want to bring the low just to the north-northwest of the UK as a relatively deep feature. In terms of how deep this is looking, we're looking, I think forecasts were around the low 990s hectopascals, millibars, whichever you prefer to say. So quite a deep low, not quite as deep as Flores was. And also this track has a little bit further northwest of the UK than Flores. As a result, most likely outcome is that this comes across the Atlantic. It's a deepish low for the time of year, and it brings some wet, it brings some windy weather, particularly towards the northwest of the UK as we go through Sunday and also into Monday, but probably not as impactful, not as severe weather-wise as Flores. Worth bearing in mind, however, that the ICON model, the German Met Service model, that has a slightly different story in as much as it has the low being a bit deeper in the 970s, and it also has it just a little bit further south-southeast, and so that means it's coming closer to the UK. So what I'm expecting to happen is that low to keep its energy as it comes across the Atlantic because of that upper trough digging down and mixing with it. Then that comes across as quite a feature, and it will bring some wet and windy weather towards the northwest, but not necessarily too severe. But we do need to cater for the fact that if you follow the GFS model, it could just stay well clear of us, and B, if you follow the ICON, the German model, then it could be a lot stronger and a bit more severe, so one to watch. At this stage, we're not talking naming storms or anything like that. It's too far off and we're not expecting it to happen, but just worth bearing in mind, if we did name it, not saying we will, but if we did, then it would keep its name as Dexter. So we wouldn't go to Gerben, which is the next one on our list. We would use the name Dexter because it's already been called Dexter in a previous life, if you will. But like I say, we're not planning to name it. It's unlikely, but it's not totally out of the question. Now, the thing that I thought I'd forgotten to show you, but I remember now, is for this bit, is when it comes to deciding which model run's doing the best, which model we want to be looking at, how confident are we with the forecast, it's worth looking and comparing the current model with what's actually happening, with what we can observe. And that's what I can do behind me here. So this is model output for currently looking across. So this is America and this is the Atlantic. And this is the upper trough. It's hard to see in this image. To be honest, I considered whether or not I would be able to see it in this image, and it's very difficult to. But trust me, there is an upper trough up here, and it's this that's going to mix with, I need to think of a better word. There is a better word and it's nagging me, but I'll find it after I finish the deep dive. Then it's going to mix with this feature. This is Tropical Storm Dexter at the moment, and it's then going to keep its momentum as it comes across. But if we compare it with the observed, I tried to line these up. So this is the actual observed satellite imagery, and it's probably really difficult for you to see, but just trust me, the upper trough is in pretty much the same place. If I just flip between the two, I can see it. I don't know if you can, but the upper trough is pretty much in the same place. So that suggests that the Met Office model is doing pretty well at the moment, and so therefore I have no reason to discount it, to discredit it at the moment for how it's handling the development that is Dexter. So I think it's quite likely that the Met Office model is going to come out on top in this instance. We'll see how it goes, and I'll check back next week. I'm doing the deep dive next Tuesday, so maybe I'll have a look back and see whether it went to plan or not. But like I say, likely to come across the Atlantic as a relatively deep area of low pressure, bring some wet and windy weather for a time, but probably not quite close enough to the UK and not quite as deep as Storm Floris was, and so not expected to be anything more than that. Whilst I'm on that note, just to go back to Storm Floris, now I mentioned that, we're going to have some unsettled weather as we go through into this weekend and next week. And we obviously had a storm yesterday. But interestingly, and I think I touched on this in the Weather Studio Live on Friday, is the fact that we've actually had several storms in August now. In fact, this was the 6th storm in August since we started naming them just 10 years ago. So that's actually relatively common. Now, some of them have come 2 in a row, so 2 in 1 August, and also some of them have been named by Met Era, so not all by the UK. But actually to have 6 August storms in just 10 years is quite a high number. And so I looked into it, and actually there's only 1 month where we haven't had any named storms as of yet. Do you know which it is? Well, I'll tell you at the end. That'll keep you watching. Right, moving on. So we've gone through the picture. So just to look at that feature then, as that low then is set to come across towards the UK. Let's get rid of the jet again and put some rain on. And then it's going to come towards the northwest of the UK and bring some fairly wet and windy weather towards parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, maybe northwestern England and Wales as well. But all the time towards the south-southeast, actually likely to stay largely dry. And with that, I alluded to it earlier, temperatures are likely to rise. So if we get rid of our rain and put our winds and our 850 temperature on, and if we just scroll back a few days, let's go to currently. At the moment, temperatures are near normal. In the breeze, it's feeling a little fresh perhaps, but in any brighter, sunnier spells and with lighter winds, it's feeling pleasantly warm, or pretty warm, if not a bit too warm for some people. But as we go through into the weekend, because of the position of the various lows, but particularly the feature that I've just spent a while talking about, what is currently Tropical Storm Dexter, obviously won't be by the time it reaches us. Because of that, the direction that we're dragging in our air, the wind's backing around to get more of that southerly flow, we're likely to drag some more warm air in across the UK, and that's likely to lead to our temperatures rising. So whilst across northern parts of the UK, Sunday looks like it could be quite wet, it could be quite windy. Across the south, yes, there'll probably still be some relatively blustery winds around. Temperatures, if anything, are going to rise, and even across northern parts, temperatures are going to rise as well. If we look at our capital cities, here's our meteogram from ECMWF, and these showing both our highs and lows for the next 2 weeks. The box and whiskers indicating how they are doing compared to seasonal average. And what you can see is at the moment temperatures, if we take Belfast for example, temperatures are near normal. But as we go through from kind of Saturday, Sunday onwards, they jump up quite markedly to significantly above average. If we look at a few others, London, for example, there's reasonable spread. As you would expect, the longer you get ahead, you expect a larger spread in these box and whisker plots. So there's some spread, but generally there's fairly good consensus that temperatures are going to be above average, and in some cases significantly above average as we go through into next week. So we could have some hot weather at times as well. Exactly how the feature that I mentioned that comes through on Sunday clears away. There could be some heavy, perhaps even thundery rain around on Monday, maybe Tuesday as well. So not necessarily totally dry, but signs that we could see some hotter weather coming through as we go through towards the through into next week. And actually I think high pressure is likely to return, so there should be a decent amount of dry fine weather as well once we get that initial unsettled bit out of the way during the weekend and the beginning part of the week. Like I said though, just to clarify, across southern areas probably not seeing a huge amount of that unsettled weather. So I think that's all I need to cover for the UK for what's going to happen. But obviously, if you need more information about looking ahead and the forecast for the UK, then check out the 14-day outlook, which is available on our app. I'll be updating that shortly. And also, I think Honor's going to be doing the 10-day trend tomorrow, so make sure you watch that as well. But one more thing that I wanted to discuss was July came to an end on Thursday, but with all the talk of Storm Floris, it may have passed you by. But the July stats showed some fairly interesting things. Now, as you might expect, it was warmer than average. It was I'm struggling to remember now. Was it the 5th or the 6th? I want to say it was the 5th warmest July on record, or was it the 6th? It was either the 5th or 6th warmest July on record, and it continues the trends, making it the 6th month in a row where temperatures have been higher than average, and the 5th month in a row where it's been in the top 10 for that month in terms of the warmest rank. So the trends are clear. It's warmer, and we're seeing warmer months compared to average way more frequently than we're seeing the colder months. And if we look at this map, and it shows different regions across the country, some places like the northern parts of Scotland, down the eastern side of England and the southeast of England were in their top 5 warmest Julys. Meanwhile, lots of places, if you weren't in your top 5, likely you were in the top 10 warmest for you for July. The other thing to highlight, rainfall, it was a big talking point, less so now that we've had some rain through this month, but it was a big talking point earlier on in the season. And across parts of Wales, southwest England, July was markedly drier than average, also across some parts of the far north of Scotland. Meanwhile, in Kent, down towards the southeast, even in towards Sussex as well, it was actually a bit wetter than average, but for many it was near normal. But if you just look at the country as a whole, that kind of hides some things, because there were some much drier than average places and a few little bit wetter than average places too. Then the other thing, whilst we're on July's temperatures, is looking at how our warm July has influenced summer as a whole. And this chart, I often share these kind of charts, but they show how the mean temperature through summer has gone on. And this is a cumulative mean temperature through the whole season up until this point. So I've got up until the 3rd of August, so the day before yesterday. And what you can see is, although June started a little bit cooler than average, thereafter it's been significantly warmer than average, and so we are well above currently the average line, and we're very close to the all-time record. In fact, our average temperature at the moment is, let me get this right, so the average temperature for the summer so far is just under 16 degrees, 16.0. I'm going to round everything to just one decimal place to make things simpler. So our average temperature at this stage in summer is just under 16.0 degrees. And now the record for the warmest summer on record is 15.8. And so we're currently ever so slightly above that. And actually, all we need for the rest of this month, for the rest of August, is for temperatures to be, mean temperature to be around 15.3 or above. And if that's the case, then we would stay above that record, and it would be the warmest summer on record. chances of us seeing 15.3 or above through the rest of August? Well, the average for August, the 1991 to 2020 average, is only 15.1, but that's 0.2 of a degree difference. And when you factor in that hotter air that I mentioned coming through this weekend into next week, temperatures look like they're going to be quite a bit above average as we go through next week at least, and possibly beyond. And you factor in that in the last 10 years, 5 of the last 10 years, so half of them, have had temperatures, mean temperatures above 15.3 through August as a whole. It makes it seem quite likely that we're going to stay above that record line, but that mark at the very end of the month or end of the season. And so it could well be the warmest summer on record. We'll touch back in a few weeks' time and see how this goes, but at the moment there are some relatively strong signs. Thank you very much for watching. That's all I wanted to cover today. I did mention that question at the beginning. Did you know which month hasn't had any named storms in it since we started naming them? The answer is actually May, which surprised me a little bit, but if you think about it, that's, well, I can't think of any May storms, so that makes sense. And so then I raised the question, should we maybe start our storm naming season at the beginning of summer, the beginning of June, because then you have your May period to have this quieter bit, your lull, before then the next storm season starts, because it would be confusing if we had a storm on the 1st of September or something, right after a storm on the 31st of August, one right after the other, and one was like a J or something, and then the other one was an A the next day. But I think the press office might be watching this and cursing me for raising that question on this format. But otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for watching. Like I said, hit the like button, hit the share button. Do get any questions or comments you have coming in. We'll either answer them in the chat or maybe in the Weather Studio Live on Friday. It's Aidan and Honor doing the Weather Studio Live this week. Like I said, Honor is doing the 10-day trend tomorrow, so make sure you catch that. But any other issues, any other questions, do get in touch. Remember, this is available on Spotify as well as on YouTube and also on our app, so do make sure you watch any of our content wherever you fancy. Anyway, I'll see you again soon. Have a great day.